Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Red, White, and You. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Summer O'Brien, and Summer is an advocate for National Parents Organization for the New York chapter, as well as a public policy major and a paralegal who has a ton of experience in family law. Today we're here to talk about the difficulties and the struggles that single parents face here in New York State. And it's a big problem. It's such a problem that New York State actually ranks the worst state in America when it comes to shared parenting. And Summer has been a huge advocate. She's been fighting for nearly 14 years to introduce new bills that are going to help these single parents out. Summer, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I know you and I have been speaking about this for probably a couple months now. You've been begging to come on the show, and it's such a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Summer, you know, as I said in the introduction to the show, single parents are struggling here in New York State. Why don't you tell everybody your personal story and why you got into this and why this means so much to you?
Yeah. Well, first off, I just want to say, a lot of work goes into advocacy and in what we do. And although I myself have not been personally, pursuing this for as long as a lot of other people have, our coalition here in New York, it makes up about 4 groups of us that all work together to fight for family rights and children's rights. And they all stem from personal experiences. A lot of people that you talk to struggle with, custody battles, hard divorces, separation, paternity issues, things like that, that all aids to why New York has an F for parenting. Personally speaking, I'm a divorced mother. I have 2 kids, and that's what pushed me into this is I was divorced 5 years ago.
Okay.
And I had an attorney, like you should have, in Monroe County Supreme Court. You go through, and we got to the trial date, and I'm sitting out in the hallway. It's a long hallway in the Supreme Court, and everybody sits out there. And my case was called, and my lawyer looks at me and says, "Stay here. I'm going to go in and do this and handle this for you." And I thought that was kind of odd. That
you didn't even go into the courtroom with them, just him.
Yeah,
on his
I
own.
couldn't even go face and talk to the judge about my own divorce. I was a bit naive back then, so I
you trust the lawyers. I mean, he's a lawyer, so okay.
That's right.
Even though it didn't feel right.
It didn't feel right, not at all. So I sat there and I waited. He was gone for about 15 minutes, and when he came back, I was divorced. How
long? I mean, there must have been a lead up to this, though. It's not like you guys met at the courtroom and then just like that. Because from what I hear, these divorce cases take like a year. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. It was a year leading up to that. You figure out as much as you can leading up to the final trial, divorce trial. You try to figure out as much as you can with your spouse, your ex-spouse. You try to put a separation agreement together, because then they could just turn that into divorce. And it's easier, less time consuming. So we did that. But the fact of the matter is, I'm a big due process person. I feel you go through the process yourself, you talk to the judge, you understand what they're saying. There's some finalization to it. And I have 2 kids with my ex. And, from the get-go, the attorney wanted me to go for custody of my children. And, I didn't feel comfortable with that.
So hold on. Let me just interrupt you for just a second. So the attorney is trying to encourage you to go for full custody.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes.
Okay. So with like not even having a discussion, just, hey, we should go for this. That was like, that's like their go-to default. We just want to get you full custody.
it really is, because
without knowing
it's
anything about your husband, really, or even
without
listening to you
knowing
talk about.
anything.
And he could be the best guy in the world, and they're still going to try to push this. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That is, they drive from conflict. And that's really what we're trying to eliminate, is this drive of conflict. And right away, I was like, well, how about me and my ex make our own arrangement and figure something out, and, leave the custody to us, and not attorneys and not judges and other court actors that are deeply involved in the family unit at this point. In New York State, there's two types of custody. A lot of people get confused. There's legal custody, then there's physical custody. And legal custody is you each get a say. You can make decisions for the children, education, religion, reasons, things like that. And then there's shared custody, and that's where the kids live.
Okay.
And those two things could be different.
And you're fighting for, not now, but you're advocating for better shared parenting laws when it comes to the custody of the children.
Yes.
That's the part you're more involved in.
Physical. Yeah, the physical custody of the children, how much they see both parents.
Okay.
That is what we're fighting for.
Okay. And tell everybody why do you even feel the need to fight for this? Clearly there's something wrong. What's statistically, who does the court favor in these situations? Yeah. So, we can go back all the way through, the beginning of the 20th century. There was a doctrine, tender years doctrine, where it just, automatically children under 5 were given to the mother because they were seen to be more tender, better caregivers, their home. Of course, the evolution of woman now into the 2021, we work. We want careers. And statistically speaking, mothers are still being awarded the majority of the custody 80% of the time in these cases. So whether they like it or not, that's just the deal. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Unless I was just going to say, you wrote, or you told me, New York State on average awards fathers only 30% of parenting time per month.
Yes.
So it sounds like, again, whether the mother wants it or not, the mother might want 50-50, but sometimes they're awarded 70%. And some moms might love that, but then other people like yourself, not because you're not a caring mother, but because you're thinking, wait a second, I need more help than this, because I'm in a career. I'm trying to work my butt off and provide for my family, just like the father is. And it's not fair that the court by default wants to just, throw 70% my way.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And we've all seen in movies. I think one of the saddest movies I've ever seen as a good indicator of this is Mrs. Doubtfire.
Okay. Yep.
Love
that movie.
It's such a great movie. But now in the work I'm doing, I look back at that movie and it's very sad. It's very depressing.
Right.
the way the father, Robin Williams' character, was treated in regard to his kids. And that's the reality. Dads are getting 4 days a month to see their children. 4 days.
I couldn't imagine going 4 minutes without seeing my son, let alone 36, 26 days.
I ask parents that all the time I come in contact with. I say, even mothers. So imagine not seeing your kid for 12 days at a time, 10, 12 days at a time, and then seeing them. What would you do? What would the first thing you do with your kid be if you didn't see them for 10 days in a stretch? Right. So it's very difficult for fathers and for mothers, because we're going long stretches. Like you said, we're working, we have passion projects. We have social lives. Single moms, they want to date. They want to get out there and have fun and meet friends and be healthy and things like that. Well, they're unable to do that, while dad, unfortunately, is sitting at home waiting to see his kids.
Right.
It seems like there's a gap there. that could, wishing he had more time. And it seems like there's a gap there that we could easily fill with just a little bit of reform.
So talk about this New York State situation. New York State has an F. Out of 50 states, New York State is ranked the worst state in America when it comes to shared parenting. Is anybody trying to change this? I mean, I know you're out there as an activist, and you are, for those of you who are just joining, we're on with Summer O'Brien. Summer is an advocate for the National Parents Organization, for the New York chapter, as well as a public policy major and a paralegal who has a lot of experience in family law. And Summer here is to tell us about her fight to help parents in New York State get shared custody 50-50 instead of the default 70-30 that the judicial system basically forces down the parents' throats.
Yes, correct. In New York State, we have representatives, like I said, in other groups that have been working in the state since the 80s. I met a gentleman in Albany. We were just in Albany two Wednesdays ago, trying to meet with senators, trying to meet with assemblymen. But, they passed the budget. So they took a break. No one was there on a Wednesday afternoon. So
Right.
we were there, and I met a gentleman who has been fighting this since the 80s. And
Wow.
he's still there. He still shows up, and he's still trying to make this work. There's a whole group of veterans that are behind this also, that they have a group called the Veteran Liberty Network. And specifically, their fathers that are vets that, are fighting for equal shared custody.
And are the mothers getting in the way when these men are fighting? You talk about these guys are fighting. Who's getting in the way? Is it just the judicial system, or are the women getting in the way, which is just not fair, and you don't think that's fair? Like who's the obstacle here? How many obstacles are there here when these men are fighting for 50-50 custody?
Yeah. So unfortunately, there's a few obstacles, not just the judicial branch. We have the American Bar Association that, they come and oppose these kind of changes because it changes the makeup, the financial makeup of the system. We also have domestic violence groups that come out in droves, thinking that children are just going to be, the number of children abuse victims is going to skyrocket if they spend 15 days a month with their fathers. We also have
who know nothing about the specifics about that family. So they come out and generalize and say, well, we just believe that if your kid, who we know nothing about, and we know nothing about the father, we think that your whole family situation is going to go in a downward spiral. So they just generalize and then come out with these statistics and throw them at you and just say, well, sorry, that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They're one of the biggest proponents. And what I try to do is I've actually reached out to the Willow House, the Willow Center here in Rochester, New York. They're one of the largest domestic abuse centers in the area. I reached out. I wanted to have a conversation. I wanted to get some research from some data to go into this bill, and they never got back to me. They won't even come to the table for a conversation unless there's a camera there, and they could really throw those statistics out that they have. They won't even come to the table for a conversation to see if we can get on a even playing field. So it's hard to say where they stand, but they're some of our biggest proponents or opponents of these bills.
Why does New York State think they know better than your own family? Well, why do they have this attitude? And for those of you who are just joining us, New York State is actually the worst state in America when it comes to shared parenting. They have an F, and I'm going to show you right now, guys. I'm just going to pull this up real quick. They have an F when it comes to 50 states in the entire country. But are you surprised? I mean, we all know the dire situation New York State is in. They are failing on so many levels, including custody battles with children. And they have an F. Can you just tell me a little bit more about why do they have an F? There must be some sort of statistics involved here. What make up giving New York State an F?
Yeah, so there's kind of I wouldn't say formula, but there's, we have laws on the books that regulate some family relations. A lot of our child custody laws are actually at the discretion of the judge.
Okay.
So it's not a statutory law that they're looking at. It's their discretion on a case by case basis. So when that comes in play, you have natural bias that comes in play. Everyone has bias. Mm-hmm. Everyone. Yep. You can't get rid of it. You can't change it.
You can't turn it off.
You can't turn it off. It's on a subconscious level.
Right.
So it's all on discretion. And we're asking New York State to say, wait, if we're going to use judges' discretion in determining families' outcomes, can we at least have a starting point? Right. We want the 50-50 shared parenting as the starting point,
right,
of that discretion. And
which Matt, right now is 70-30. The starting point and the default go-to is usually 70% to the mother, 30% to the father. And all these groups are in the way of getting to 50-50. So ultimately, the father, who could be the most loving, nurturing single parent in the world, he gets screwed. And then also the mother gets screwed, like you're saying, because she might want the father to have more custody. And now she has to deal with the overwhelming pressure of taking care of these kids on their own, especially when working towards a career.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And in New York, New York is really good at providing assistance to single mothers, aren't they? They're they've had that figured out. That is a formula they have figured out over the years of how to provide assistance to single mothers. So it's very incentivized. There's incentive.
Give me some examples here.
Food stamps, welfare, Section 8, daycare credits, things like that. I mean,
so you're almost selling it with all of these kind of freebies that are going to entice the mother to take that deal quickly, leaving the father to be like, wait a second, what about me? Right. Like, what do I get out of this?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we know, the more kids, the more incentives, the more child support. And it's a system that's meant to keep you, I believe, as a woman, to keep you where you are and to limit growth and potential. And that's really sad that it's stemming from family court here in New York. That's really disturbing.
It is. And I looked at some statistics, and I'm going to pull those up, guys. For those of you who are, again, just joining us, we're talking about shared parenting versus single parenting. And Summer is a big advocate of just trying to get New York State to welcome the 50-50 concept at a default level. And it's something they've been fighting for years. Some people have been fighting for decades, literally decades, since the 80s. And New York State refuses to budge on this law because they think they know better than the families themselves. So single parenting, I mean, it's a very dangerous situation for a lot of these kids to be in. Statistically, 63%, single parenting versus shared parenting, these children represent 63% of teen suicides, 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions, 71% of high school dropouts. I mean, that's a huge number. So when you're fighting to have 50-50 be the default in New York State, you're fighting to prevent these statistics from rising. You're fighting to decrease these statistics. So, 63% of teen suicides coming from a single parent, there's a problem. There's clearly a problem. 85% of those who do end up, or high school dropouts, end up being thrown in prison. 85% of children who exhibit behavioral disorders and 90% of homeless and runaway children are a product from single parenting. 85% of teen pregnancies. So why don't you think, why does New York State not look at these laws or these statistics and think we need to do something? This clearly shared parenting is the answer. So why don't they budge here?
That's a good question, Matt. That's something we've been asking our assemblymen and women and senators, myself for a couple of years now, others in the group for, like you said, decades. We ask the same questions over and over again as to, we have some solutions for you. We have some answers for you. When we hear that New York State or the governor is coming up with a new program or a new agency to help, we'll pick a stat, help high school dropout rates.
Right.
My head explodes because I said, we already have a solution, and that's to include and improve family units through shared parenting. It is proven, study after study, the more time a child spends with both parents, the better off they are, the healthier they are emotionally, physically, economically. They benefit all the way around. And we keep asking these questions and they don't give us any answers back. And that's where we're at now, is we want to know why. What is stopping New York from going forward to help decrease these stats?
And what's in it?
Those are horrible.
Yeah, they are horrible. And what's in it for New York? I mean, that's the question that I have to ask. If there's nothing good about this, I mean, the reason these people don't change these laws is because there's something in it for somebody. Someone's benefiting somewhere. Who do you think's benefiting in this situation by literally hurting these children? Because that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
they're benefiting by hurting these children. Who benefits?
Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of benefits to it for New York, especially when it comes to the actors involved. Right? If you think of it like a play, the parents and the children's are the characters, and the production crew is New York State, and that's we're discussing the American Bar Association here in New York, the attorneys, the counties, the judges, the child support enforcement unit, welfare programs, center nonprofits that cater to teen pregnancy, to dropouts,
right.
All of it. It's a system within a system, and they benefit from family misery.
See, that's disgusting that all these people are making money off of these kids failing in life. And that's what's going on.
Yep. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And, to tote, New York as being some progressive mecca of the United States is a joke at this point. Like you said,
which Cuomo keeps doing, and people keep believing in it. But then you look at these stats. I mean, do you think parents would think New York State was the kind of the like you said, the mecca and go-to role model for all states if they saw statistics like this? If they knew that 85% of these single parent children end up in prison, or that 63% of them commit suicide as teens, they probably wouldn't think too highly of Cuomo in our judicial system after seeing stuff like this.
No. Or how about the fact, I'm not going to name any names, but, there have been numerous instances of children dying due to family court decisions.
And how dying? How are they dying?
By the hands of the other parent.
Oh, like physically, like being killed, you mean?
Yes, being murdered.
Like abuse. Okay.
When family court gets it wrong, they get it very wrong.
Right. And there's no going back on that.
There's no going back. There's no going back from that. And they really make it a competitive nature,
Right.
and they really make it a lose-lose situation. And who's in the middle? Children. Children are in the middle.
Mhm.
And really, that's what our group is trying to do, is to reserve, the human rights of children. And they have the right to graduate high school, to be mentally stable, to have access to both parents, and not to live in poverty. I mean, that's a big one too, Matt, is, I think you're 4 times as likely to be in poverty in a single mother household, than you are when you have both parents involved.
Well, are you surprised? Look at the incentives that they're
No.
giving them. It's no different than what
Exactly.
we're going through right now with coronavirus and all of the
Oh, great.
socialist handouts that people are getting right now. It's incentivizing laziness. Who wants to go back to work when they're getting their COVID bonus pay, they're getting their stimulus checks, but at the same time, they're not working to thrive, to be ultra successful in life. It's
Right.
almost like
Right.
that socialist mentality is now holding everybody back. So I'm not surprised that when you're incentivizing these single women with and let's be honest, these aren't award-winning prizes here. It's like, here's a little
No.
bit of money to barely be able to eat. Here's housing. What do you call it? Section
8.
Section 8 housing, which, I mean, you're not, most people wouldn't wish it upon their worst enemy to live in these conditions
No.
that
Well,
these
Matt,
women are being forced to live in.
well, and then you're forgetting, the golden standard of child custody, of course, is child support. That's the golden standard across the board, is
Right.
child support. And New York gets it wrong there too. I mean, they could take upwards to 31% of your gross pay
Right.
for your family.
So now you're screwing the father as far as how he
Mhm.
how often he's able to see the kids, and you're burying
Mhm.
him financially.
Yep. Yep.
All because the default in New York State is to award the mother 70% based on nothing.
Yeah.
Before you even
Based
look at the
based on
mental,
nothing.
right, based on nothing.
No.
Before you even look at the physical, the mental capacity, the physical capacity of the father, they're already ruling in favor of the mother. And if you get a couple who isn't as kind as you towards your divorced ex-husband, a lot of
Mhm.
these women are going to take their ex-husbands for a ride, and they're going to let
Oh,
the system
absolutely.
rinse them. Unless
Absolutely.
now, if you get involved and you say, no, I don't want this, I'm not for this, I
Mhm.
demand my ex-husband have 50-50, they will allow that, right? Or do you have to even fight them on that?
Yeah. So if it's a civil, mediated agreement, they will honor that,
Okay.
because they also don't want to go to trial. It takes up a lot of time, a lot of resources for everybody.
Mhm.
And so they do, they also try to avoid going to trial, in many of the cases. So if you come to them and say, listen, we came up with this agreement, get it in writing. I tell everybody, get everything in writing, and you hand it over, they'll agree to that. And you don't even necessarily need that, Matt. Here in New York, you can literally call up your ex-spouse, come up with some arrangement, and go about your life and do it.
Instead of paying the tens of thousands of dollars to
Yeah.
a lawyer over a
Right.
year-long period.
Right.
Why do you think so many people don't do that? Why are these big custody? How come we have so many custody battles here in New York State? What's the reason for this? Why can't more
Well,
people just compromise on their
yeah,
own?
well, I think it's because of what we're talking about is the incentives. I think it's been, a lot of misinformation is out there to women, revolving child custody. A lot of it is, well, if I have more custody, I get more child support. That's the big one. That's the big thinking a lot of women have going into this. If I have sole custody, I get all the child support. Well, little do they know, in New York, it's 2 different statutes. We have the custody laws and child support. They're 2 separate laws
Okay, so
that have nothing to do with each other. Okay. So if we start educating women and say, you could still share your kids which is best for
So
them.
50
It's in
50.
50-50. You could still provide for them and share them with the father. You will still get the same amount of child support in most cases.
So-
The two don't relate to each other. It's, New York State is set up very weird.
Right. And like you said, people aren't educated. And it's
Right.
almost like they don't want them to be educated because of all of the side organizations that are rinsing profits off of these children suffering. So you have these children suffering. You have a high percentage of them suicide, teen pregnancies, all products of single parenting, and nobody wants to do anything about it because then that would hurt the finances for all of these other organizations.
Oh, absolutely. It hurt the bottom line.
Right.
It would hurt the bottom line in the family court system. It's a huge, I don't know the exact number because it changes like weekly, but it's a multi-billion-dollar industry a year.
So children suffering in New York State is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Nationwide. It's
nationwide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's rakes in so much money.
Okay. So speaking of nationwide, we all know that New York State has it horribly wrong. They have an F on the report card. So again, for those of you who are just joining us, we're talking about New York State and how they are failing single parents here in this state. They are failing children, and they are the worst state in America as far as single parenting or shared parenting is concerned. And Summer O'Brien is here with us today, and she's an advocate of National Parents Organization for the New York chapter, as well as a public policy major and a paralegal who has experience in family law. And Summer has been fighting this. All she wants is to get New York State to be a 50-50 default state instead of a 70-30 that is now happening in the court system. And it's destroying the lives of these children. So New York State has an F out of 50 states. It is the worst state. There's only, by the way, people, there's only 2 states in the entire country who have an F. Are you surprised that New York State's one of them? I mean, look at how miserable people are here today. It's like they are intentionally doing everything they can to destroy our lives, our businesses, and now our families. So we know New York State's the worst. Summer, who has it right? Who's got it right in America when it comes to custody battles with children?
Yeah. So in the past few years, there have been a few states that have really stepped up. They've listened to their groups. They've listened to their community members, and they listened to the statistics. I know Kentucky is one of them. They passed a shared parenting bill with some pretty good language in the bill that kind of closes some loopholes that us in the legal field have, a lot of problems with. I also know Arkansas is another one. They were just on it. They just passed the shared parenting bill. And with Arkansas, like I was talking about with New York, how the child support is a separate issue from custody. Arkansas went ahead when they did the bill for shared custody. They also introduced a bill to change their child support. So they did it at simultaneously to close those loopholes, again, that we know a lot of people would take advantage of. And actually very exciting news. This, today, actually right now going on, there's live hearings in Texas for their bill, the HB 803 bill. Right now we have a team down there. We have Dad Talk Now, which is a podcast that's really popular.
I've heard of it.
Eric Carroll is a great gentleman. I met him. He is a very nice person to talk with. He's going around, he interviews us, he talks to these groups, we try to, pull out some information from some government, and he's in Texas right now, and they're in hearings right now, hopefully get the shared parenting bill going and voted on tonight. They have, I think when I saw, they had close to 30 people speaking on the floor today. So, if that goes till 4:00 in the morning, well, then it does. And hopefully they get it done today. And we know, politically speaking, California, Texas, and New York are the big sister states. But again, I come back to my point. where I think that's old thinking. That's outdated. I don't think New York is with those two states anymore. I think New York used to lead the way in progression and being on top of the curve of social events. But I think over the past, how long's Cuomo been in office? 8 years?
Right. Yep.
I think over the past 8 years, I think we've really fallen off the horse a little bit.
So do you think let's talk about New York State for a second. And there's a bill now you're trying to help get passed to give the father more of a say in the matter in a 50-50 custody situation. Who's behind this? Republicans, Democrats? Who's behind this bill? I know you don't want to really get into names right now, so you don't put too much pressure on these people, but politically, who's supporting it? Who's in the way?
Yeah. So since I've been on board with the organization and also doing my own research over the past few years here, it's very apparent that Democrats are not touching this with a 10-foot pole.
Okay.
They don't reach out. We actually called last Wednesday or 2 Wednesdays ago. We were in Albany and we called a lot of Democratic Assembly members, and they're not there. No one answered. No callbacks. Just no contact at all. So historically speaking, Republicans have pushed for this.
Okay.
I think it's been a Republican every time who introduced this, who sponsors it.
And you have a sponsor now for this bill.
We have a sponsor now. And they're doing great work. There's a member of my team who is working directly with him, the assemblyman. They work together just to kind of make sure some of the verbiage is right. We want to get the right verbiage. We want to get the loopholes closed because we don't want families spending their time in court. We want families spending their time at the ballpark or at the dinner table. You shouldn't be in court. We don't want that. That's not good for anybody.
And the more you're in court, the more it destroys these families. I mean,
yes.
The children don't even have a say. They might have a lawyer, but let's be honest. They're being dictated as to what to say for the narrative here.
Yeah.
I mean, they all know where they want to end up, and they're going to make sure that that children says whatever's needed to be said to give the mother more of the custody. Well, sure, Matt.
If you meet a certain income limit, which a lot of them do, your children are getting an attorney who is provided by the county, the very county you're going to court in.
You're right, and you're fighting against now to get 50-50 custody. So it's the game's rigged. You're going into court.
Very much so.
You're going into court knowing that the father's going to lose. So if the father and the mother are just kind of butting heads over the situation, it's very likely the father is going to lose in this situation. And then the kids are ultimately going to suffer.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we had some personal experiences here in our household where, my fiance, he had 50-50 custody until they went to court. And now he is the every other weekend dad.
Wait, how did that work? So how does that happen? He had 50-50 custody.
Yep.
So how did it end up back in court?
Well, because, certain things weren't liked by the other party, and they just keep petitioning back to court and keep petitioning because there's no burden or standard to petition to go back to family court. You can literally just write whatever you want on the petition. The court clerks are more than happy to help you fill out your paperwork.
Right. And
you file it and you're back in court. And it goes to trial, or you have to get an attorney and it costs you more money. So, unfortunately, my fiance and I've been supporting him through this, but over the course of 3 years, he's been to court. He's probably had.
Oh, okay. And I understand now. Your fiance and his ex-wife, because I'm thinking, wait a second.
No.
I was thinking your ex-husband. Your fiance is back in court now with his ex-wife because she keeps coming at him, even after a 50-50 custody battle has been solved.
yeah, they were sharing the kids. Everything was going great, and things happen, and back to court they went. And
Because maybe
after,
they got in a fight over something and now the
right,
mom wants to take it out on
right,
him and act childish
yes,
and say, well, I want the kids now.
right,
Right.
absolutely,
Yeah. And this is
absolutely.
where the father loses.
And this is where he loses when you go back to court.
Yeah.
The groups I work with, they have that's their saying is, oh, I had 50-50 custody until I went to court. Because if you work it out between the parents, you could do whatever you want. You don't have to go to family court.
Mhm.
You can work it out and be adults. And,
Yeah.
And also that's what this bill is also trying to do, is we're trying to change the standard of proof. When you go to court, we don't think people should just be able to say and accuse and make accusations, baseless accusations, and get their foot in the door.
I'm just reading a few of these comments. James says, investigate Suffolk County Family Court. Does that mean anything to you?
Oh, I'm not going to Suffolk County, James.
So he says, investigate Suffolk. Do you know anything about Suffolk County Court?
Yeah, they're a notoriously horrible county.
Really?
Horrible county. Yeah. A few of our group members are from down there, and that's a horrible county. Unfortunately, I really feel for the families that are down there in Suffolk County Family Court, because that's a tough county to get through.
So if you're in Suffolk County, you're losing that battle as the father.
Move out of the county. Yeah.
Bobby says, yup, thank you, Summer. So somebody's, thanking you for everything you do. Bobby says you shouldn't have to pay to see your children.
Absolutely.
Frank says Gales don't even speak with the kids. I'm not sure what that means. Frank said not just the fathers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what comment he's referring to exactly. It could have to do with, not just maybe just not the father. Maybe the mother suffer. Everybody suffers. It could have to do with suffering. I'm not sure exactly what comment, Frank, but Frank also did say that's wonderful. However, some parents lie to weaponize to guarantee an outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was kind of talking about, that, we're trying to close these loopholes too, that you can just say and, or accuse, or, come up with these accusations to get your way into the court, without any proof, without a burden, there. And we're trying to fix that. Because there's also a big problem with orders of protection. Which, I could talk about that for another 5 hours. Mm-hmm. It disproportionately affects men more than women. However, women are, affected, but just not at the rate men are. False allegations of domestic abuse is probably the number one concern right now in family court, and that's used to weaponize the children.
You wrote here, you were giving me a list of points, and I found this to be interesting. Black families face a disproportionate amount of fatherless homes. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about the Black community and kind of compare? I mean, it's kind of appropriate to discuss because, there's so much going on today. We're all being made very aware of what goes on in the Black community, especially with all of these other nationwide, whether it be shootings or everything else that the Black community is going to. Why is it disproportionate? Tell me a little bit about the Black community. Do they suffer so much more?
Well, I think we need to pull into attention also, over the years, the marriage rate has gone down. Okay. And children born out of wedlock has increased. And if you look at some studies, I could post those on my Facebook page later on. This affects the Black communities, more than other communities.
No, just lost you there.
Sorry.
There you go.
Sorry about that. And, you could see, again, if you look at the statistics for fatherless homes, and then you look at statistics in Black communities, they almost align. High dropout rate, incarceration, drug use, teen pregnancy. You can almost put them together, and they're mirror images of each other. And we also know, I've talked to people. I talked to fathers down in Rochester, um, you know, Black fathers. I've talked to a couple Puerto Rican fathers, and they're going through the same struggle. They know that fathers are there. They may live 2 blocks down from their kids, but they're not
allowed to see them.
They're not actively involved because
is it because they don't want to be involved, or because they can't be involved? Because again, being children out of wedlock, so automatically the mother's gonna get 100% custody, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you're out of wedlock, so automatically which is probably another issue if you think about it. I mean, it doesn't mean just because the father didn't marry the mother doesn't mean they don't love their children,
right?
So these men, and again, regardless of race, yes, we might see a little bit more of it amongst Black communities, but either way, these children born out of wedlock, automatically the father is shut out of the child's life.
Yeah, unless you have a few $1,000s you're not doing anything with. I mean, and then you can go to court, get paternity, get an attorney, fight for custody, all that. Then you could be in your child's life. But
which is what Frank just said, or somebody commented here. They said, yeah, Bobby said you shouldn't have to pay to see your children.
Yeah.
So then it goes back to the system. Everybody wants to make money out of these families suffering. And Bobby's absolutely right. You should not have to pay to fight to see your own child.
Right.
Wedlock or not.
Right. Wedlock or not. Absolutely. And, also like what Frank was saying, it happens to women too, at a, smaller rate. But of course, I mean, can you imagine, the stigma of if a mom doesn't have custody of her kids?
Oh, it just, there'd be nationwide uproar.
Yeah. I mean, you would automatically be labeled as just some horrible abusive person if you're a mother and you don't have custody of your children. So, but it all comes back to just equality, Matt. It's 2021. Equality between man and woman should be an automatic.
It's funny, and I absolutely agree with you. You know what's so hypocritical about the whole equity situation and the equality situation we're seeing out of Washington right now is they are picking and choosing where they want equality while throwing away the rest. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. And I know where you're going with this. You want equality? Then let's give 50-50 to both men, the father and the mother, regardless of wedlock or not. You want to say women deserve equal rights? Well, equal rights goes for everybody.
Right. Absolutely. And anybody, if you have an issue for the opponents that are out there, if you have an issue with equality between mom and dad, well then, we need to talk about that. It should be the standard, the golden standard across the board, equality between mom and dad, and go from there. But really, to go back to the party line thing, this is a bipartisan issue. This is simply
supposed to be
bipartisan issue, right? I don't see any reason why any side of the aisle would have a problem with protecting children's rights and providing what's best for children in this state.
Why do you think Democrats aren't on board with this?
Well,
they haven't signed on to sponsor a bill. Not a single Democrat has sponsored a bill to try to give 50-50 custody, or at least make 50-50 custody the default. Not saying it's always going to work out that way. There's some people who
it's a presumption
not to see their children because they are a serious threat to those children.
Absolutely.
But it's almost like you're criminalizing the father by default, and then he has to prove his love to work his way up to a 50-50 situation. So why you say it's a bipartisan issue? Unfortunately, I don't see it that way, though, because Democrats want nothing to do with the bill and Republicans support it. So although I believe that it should be bipartisan, it certainly doesn't appear that way. Why do you think that is?
Right. Well, I think a lot of the Democrats look at this as strictly a father's rights movement. They see men wanting to come up and grab what's theirs. And we all know that, they don't really get behind that stance, that social stance. That's why I'm here. That's why I joined on board, because I say, hey, wait, I'm a woman. I'm a mother.
Which I think is so much more powerful. And I think it's great that you are fighting for the men.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's what's best for the children. And I have 2 stepkids and I support their father, and I've helped him with his battle and try to do this. So I want to sit there, and any Democrats that are out there and have concerns, questions, please reach out to me, and I will be more than glad to set up a meeting.
And how can they do that on that topic? How can they reach out to you? Because there's quite a few comments coming in here, and I can sense the frustration. How do people reach out to you? Where's the hope here?
Yeah. So for any information on research, National Parents Organization, that's what they do best. Okay. They are a hub of phenomenal data and research, and great resources for parents that are going through any kind of custody battle that may just need more information to empower and educate themselves in the matter. It's a great resource for that. And then also, you can find me on Instagram. I'm there at some OB on Instagram. You can find me there. I post, a lot of, inspirational, motivational posts about shared parenting and parenting rights and things like that. And then you can find me on Facebook. I may not accept your friend request, but you can always message me, and that's at Summer O'Brien. And we can talk
for everybody to see. Some OB on Instagram and Summer O'Brien on Facebook.
Yeah. And I'm open. I talk to a lot of parents reach out to me, and I'll, talk to them on the phone, and we'll see what we could do and try to come up with solutions. I'm a very solution oriented person. So when I see a problem, I want to come up with a solution. And I think this bill, A0, what is it again? I can't remember.
The actual bill's name.
It's been a very long day, Matt.
Well, you know what? When you do have it, go back into these comments and put it in. Michael Gilligan says, if you want 50-50 as a presumption, that means you're going to legislate rights I supposedly already have. It's insane. Shared parenting is a trap. So it sounds, so he's saying, if you want 50-50 as a presumption, that means you're going to legislate rights I supposedly already have. So what do you think he means by that? Shared parenting is a trap.
Before I answered that question, I asked him if he was a parent.
Right. Okay.
But, if you think having your kids, 17 to 30% of the month is your right, and that's all you're satisfied with, then okay.
Right.
Then I could see where that may hurt you. But 99% of the people I talk to,
I would think so. Yeah. Absolutely.
Really want more.
Yeah. Bobby says, follow the money. It's all about the money for them. And absolutely. Yeah. And we discuss this. Guys, look, if you look at the statistics, this is what's happening here. For those of you who haven't seen this or you're joining us late, this is what's happening with single parent children. Single parenting versus shared parenting. These children of single parents represent 63% of teen suicides. So 63% of teen suicides come from being a product of single parents. 70% of juveniles in state operated institutions. 71% are high school dropouts. 75% of children in chemical abuse centers. So these kids who are in these single parent households, the statistics are staggering. I mean, a huge percentage of these kids end up on drugs, end up like alcoholics, end up killing themselves. 85% end up in prison. I mean, we're not talking 20, 30% here, Summer. We're talking 70, 80, 90% of homeless and runaway children are a byproduct of single parents. There's no disputing whatsoever that it's not working. and we are
It's not
destroying
worth.
these children's lives. And Bobby is 100% right. It's all because of money. And the fact that the Democrats do
Yeah.
not support this bill mean they're in on the money trail. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, and those are the questions I asked. How do we change this? How do we, make, these children the next couple generations down the road better? If the divorce rates are going up,
We're
the
going to see
marriage
more
rates
of
are
it.
going down, we're going to see more. And, I really hate to say this, but if it doesn't become a bipartisan issue, this state is going to suffer
Mhm.
for a long, long time with these issues. And I personally don't want to see that. I mean, I'm lucky enough, my children are older and, they're becoming more rational human beings, little independent human beings. But, someone who's just starting out, divorcing at your kids are 3, 5 years old. I mean, that's a long life to live of, through the court system and being used and abused through the system. And, maybe one day becoming one of those statistics.
Well, Summer, thank you so much for shedding some light on this situation. I don't think people are aware of how catastrophic the situation is for these children and for these fathers and also for the mothers who bear the overwhelming responsibility and financial burden for now
Right.
having to deal with these kids more so than the fathers. And if you want to know more about the organization that Summer is a part of and that she is an advocate of, it's called National Parents Organization. And Summer is an advocate for the New York chapter, as well as a public policy major and a paralegal who has a lot of experience in family law. And you can reach out to Summer on Instagram at is that SUMOB?
It's some
OB.
OB.
So
Yes.
SUMOB. You can
Yes.
also look her up on Facebook, Summer O'Brien, and we'll include some important links for you guys who are really struggling with the single parent situation, who are devastated over the fact that you don't feel the verdict was right. If you don't have 50-50 custody, we'll have some links for you to learn about how to fight against this here in New York State. And thank you so much, Summer, for fighting for these families, for these fathers, and more importantly, for the children. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Matt. It's my pleasure.
Good. If there's anything we can do, let us know. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today's episode of The Red, White, and You, where we discuss the fact that New York State is failing our children miserably. We go live every single day at 3 o'clock. If you want to be a guest on this show, email guestspot@youmadeitpolitical.com. You get to pick the topic and you get to tell the world what you think, and we'll do our best to support you. You guys all have a great rest of the afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow.